Okay, so the FMS is now our screening tool for the healthy population. And I mentioned before, it's broken into the big three, which are the weight-bearing tests, and then the little four, which are actually the more primitive and stability-related tests. We're going to do a quick peek at each one of them, but keep in mind that there's 7 tests, and we'll grade each movement 1, 2, or 3. 3 means you complete the movement perfectly, 1 is you can't complete it at all, and 2 is you complete it with some form of compensation. So that way we can assign you a score out of 21. Emergent research now shows that anything below a 14 is a 50% risk of increased injury. There's been studies in firefighters and the military that are now supporting this. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the big 3 first. We're going to start with the overhead deep squat. We're going to face that way. Keep the elbows locked and squat down for me as far as you can go. And come on back up. Good, back down. Although we want to know if there's pain with any movement, that's not one of our key indicators here. Here we're just looking at movement quality and giving it a number. That was a little shaky, so what I would do is we would do a regression of that to see if you could then do a modified version. So all I'm going to say right now is that's not a 3. We would look at that more in detail to see if it's a 1 or a 2. Moving on, we're going to look at the next test, which is the hurdle step. So let's stand back here. Where the squat is our symmetrical stance pattern, this is going to be our single leg stance pattern. So put your feet up against the board, feet together. Take your right foot, go right over the string, tap your heel, and come back over. We see the same thing on the left side. And back over. Good. So here we have our single leg movement pattern, and it's our first chance to look at an asymmetry. If we're doing a screen, we know that the #1 risk factor for an injury is a previous injury. The second most relevant factor is an asymmetry. So during the FMS, we're really looking at differences side to side or front to back. And if we find one, we're going to jump on that right away with any fitness or conditioning program to try to take that away. The last of the big 3 is our split stance position. So we're going to set up with an inline lunge. If we were doing a full test, I would actually measure his leg length and set up his stride accordingly. Breaking it up. Then, I want you to keep the head, shoulder blades, and the tailbone on that stick. Take this knee, touch the board, and come back up to stand. Good. Down again. And back up. Good. And we would repeat this on the other side, again looking for an asymmetry. Those are, as mentioned before, the big 3. Now we're going to look at the little 4. And when we're talking exercise corrections, we're actually going to spend more time making sure the little 4 are dialed in than, again, trying to jump right to a weight-bearing one. Reason being is if you can do a correction on an easier movement pattern, the weight-bearing patterns might actually take care of themselves. So we're going to look at our upper body reaching pattern. Let's stand right here. I'm just looking at a global hand length here. So we got 7 inches. Feet together. Grab your thumbs. Put your arms straight out to the side. Reach your hands behind your back together. And there we've got 8 inches. Show the other side. And there we've got 8 inches. So we have symmetry, but if we're grading that a 3, he's got to have a reach within his hand length. So he's a symmetrical 2, which is not a real major indicator. So we're going to pass that one and move on to the next one. Go ahead and lay down. Yep. This is a combination forward bending and alternate leg stride test. Legs out, palms up, and put your feet together. And make sure your ankle is locked up. Slowly, with your left knee locked, bring it up in the air. And back down. Other side. And back down. Good. Now, there's a system where we're looking at how high he is able to lift his ankle in relation to the other leg before the down leg rotates. So it might have been hard to pick up there, but he's able to get his ankle just past his knee joint line before his other leg either externally rotates or flexes. So that qualifies as a symmetrical 2. Again, it kind of passes him, and it's not a case where we've got to look at that real closely. The last 2 tests deal more with core stability. The first one is for what we call hard core, or being able to brace the spine, essentially lock the ribs onto the pelvis in order to transfer force. So flip on your stomach, toes in, and I'm going to position your hands over there. Okay. Bring the elbows and the knees up together, knees up, elbows up, and do a push-up for me. Good, back down. Slide your hands back a little bit, elbows up, and try again. Good, back down. You can relax for a second. So we're not looking at arm strength here. What I'm looking for is if I put him in an extended position, can he lift as one unit? So with the hands above the forehead, he wasn't able to get up, or if he was, he would likely lift the shoulders first and bring the hips to follow. So that's not a 3. On his press, there was just a subtle rotation here with the hands in a lower position, so that would qualify him for a 1. So if I'm working on Ryan on designing his exercise program, we're going to look more closely at trying to dial in his core before we deal with anything else. We know he's got a little history here, so we're not going to mess with that too much. Come on, your hands and knees for me. Now, the last test, rotary stability, really deals with the inner core, meaning does your brain activate the reflexive unit before you reach an arm or a leg out? So the first part is exceptionally challenging. I want you to try to reach out your left arm and left leg, bring your knee to your elbow, and then reach out again. Okay, and back down. He actually had to lean into me. He touched his foot down there, so that's not a 3. Now, reach out. Left leg, right arm. Touch your knee to your elbow. Reach out again. And back down. Good. That would qualify for a 2. We're going to take a quick peek at the other side just to make sure there's no asymmetry. So try to go right arm, right leg. Knee to elbow. And back. Better, but didn't get knee to elbow, so we can't give him the 3. Let's go left leg, right leg, left shoulder. Knee to elbow, and back down. Good. So, symmetrical 2s. Stand up next time. So now what we do is taking the results of that test, we're going to look at what he does on the little 4, analyze that for an asymmetry or weakness. Basically anything that's a 1 or an asymmetry, we're going to try to correct first. So if I'm working with Ryan, excuse me, we're going to look at his push-up control first, clean that up, and then move into other fitness programs.